Hello my beautiful kittens. In this video we're going to be doing a Navia weapons tier list. Just as usual, we're going to be going through all of the Claymores in the game, and then we're going to be ranking them based around which of them are the best for Navia. Obviously based around which one of them gives the best damage for Navia. First of all though, we got to go through the weapons requirements so we know based around what we're ranking these weapons. So Navia is going to be mainly just a normal DPS. That means it's generally just like normal DPS weapons. She's going to scale pretty well with attack or any attack bonuses, so this is going to be pretty good. Any damage bonuses, either elemental skill damage bonuses or elemental damage bonuses in general, those are going to be pretty good because they're just going to buff her damage. Both crit rate and crit damage are going to be pretty good. Obviously crit rate is going to be kind of more important because she already scales with crit damage, but even crit damage is also going to be pretty good. So yeah, it's pretty much, as I said, just the normal, DPS weapons. But either way, let's move on to weapons and we're going to rank them specifically for Navia. Alright, so starting off with the 3-star weapons, usually they have low base attack, so they probably won't be able to compete with the other weapons, but we're going to see them either way. First of all, we have the first Shadow, low base attack, HP as a substat, is going D tier. We have the Bloodstained Greatsword, also low base attack and then Elemental Mastery is D tier 2. We have the Skyrider Greatsword, low base attack, physical damage, D tier. We have the White Iron Greatsword, low base attack, defense is going D tier. And then finally we have the Debate Club, also low base attack, but it's going to have an attack substat, which is better than the other weapons. The passive is just going to buff your normal and charge attacks, which is not really a big deal. So even though it's better than the other 3 stars, but it generally isn't the weapon you want to use. So honestly, I'd say D tier 2. So yeah, as I said, just for the low base attack, the low stats, she's like a normal orthodox DPS. So all of the 3-star weapons generally are not going to be the weapons you'd want to use on her. Alright, so now moving on to the 4-star options. First of all, we have the Bell, average base attack for 4-star weapon, and then HP as a substat. The passive is just going to give you a shield and then damage bonus if you're protected by a shield. So it's pretty much just low base attack and then some damage bonus. Really isn't the weapon you'd want to use. I'd honestly say it's D tier 2. Maybe C tier, but you don't want to use it anyway, so I'd say just D tier. We have the Sacrificial Greatsword, high base attack, and then energy recharge as a substat. You don't really want energy recharge on your weapon, but if you already have a energy recharge substat on your weapon, it can be usable if you go like other stats on your artifacts. The passive is just the sacrificial passive, so you can have 2 skills. I'm not really sure if that's going to work pretty well, to be honest. You might be able to fit in another elemental skill hit in the rotation, but you probably wouldn't really be charging that many crystals with your second elemental skill, so it wouldn't really be just like double the damage of your elemental skill. That's going to take too long. So yeah, I don't know, I'm not sure how is that going to work. I think you might be able to fit in another elemental skill, probably not charged, but you might be able to fit one. Either way, I don't really think that's the weapon you'd want to use generally. I put it as C tier just for the high base attack and the probability, but yeah, I don't think that's the weapon you'd want to be using on Navia. So yeah, I'll put it as C tier. Now we have the Favonius Greatsword, very low base attack, energy recharge as substat, and then just the Favonius passive is just going to give energy to the rest of your team and also you. She doesn't really need that much energy, so you probably don't want to really use this weapon. It's going to help out your team with energy, but that's not really necessary probably. You just want to get a damage weapon. So yeah, I'll just put that C tier. We have the Royal Greatsword, high base attack for a 4-star weapon and then attack as a substat. The passive is just a useless passive though. It's just completely useless, so that's bad. But just for the high base attack and then the attack substat, even though it's small, I'd say it's a usable weapon. So I'll put it like lower B tier. We have the Blacklift Slasher, average base attack for a 4-star weapon, then crit damage as a substat. The passive is going to give you attack if you beat an opponent, which is super good. The thing is, that's not going to be always available, so that's a problem. Sometimes you just have like one big opponent and stuff like that. The whole Blacklift, problem, which might limit this weapon. It's still pretty good though. I would say just average base attack and then crit damage. That's always pretty good, especially the crit. It's going to help you out to build her pretty well. And then sometimes you manage to get 1 or 2 stacks from the passive. That's also going to be pretty good. It's very inconsistent though, so I'll put that like B tier. If you have like good stacks, like 2 or 3, it's probably going to be like A or even S tier, to be honest. But as I said, that's not always available, so you cannot really count on that. So I'll just leave it at B tier. It's definitely still usable though. You have the free-to-play Prototype Arcade, high base attack for a 4-star weapon, then attack as a substat. The passive is pretty much just not really as good. It's just some extra damage, but either way, it's a usable weapon. Just, high base attack for 4-star and then attack substat, that's usable. So yeah, I'll just put that B tier too. We have the Rain Slasher, it's just elemental mastery, low base attack. Even the passive is not really as good. good. Honestly, I'd say it's just D tier. Now I have the Serpent Spine, the previous Battle Pass weapon. Average base stack for a 4-star weapon, then crit rate as a substat, which is pretty good. The passive is that for every 4 seconds you're on the field, it's going to give you 6% more damage, but you're going to gain 3% increased damage with a maximum of 5 stacks. You can also leave the field and it's not going to like cancel, but if you take damage, it's going to reduce it by 1 stack, which is a problem. The thing is though, if you have the stacks active on this weapon, it's actually going to be pretty good, especially with refinements. It's going to be giving you pretty much crit rate and then elemental damage bonus, which is super good. As I said before, those 2 things are very good for Navia, as for any like pretty much, you know, orthodox DPS. The thing is, I'm not really sure how consistent that's going to be. It's going to be kind of long to activate like the full passive. You're going to have to stay on the field for a total of 20 seconds, which is not really always, you know, ideal. Also, if you take any sort of damage, you're going to lose stacks, so you're probably going to need a shielder with this weapon. I don't think the crystallized shields are going to be enough, but if you manage to get all of that, it's definitely going to be a pretty good weapon. It's actually going to be one of her best weapons, I think. So fully activated, this weapon is definitely going to be S tier. The thing is, I think it's kind of long for it to be fully activated, so I'll just put it at A tier. It's not as consistent as you'd want it to be, which is a problem in my opinion. I don't like weapons like that. But yeah, it's definitely a pretty good weapon, especially as I said with the refinements. The more refinements you get, the much better it gets. So yeah, I'll just leave it at A tier. We have the White Blind, it's just defense. It's probably going D tier. We have the Lithic Blade, average base stack and then attack as a substat, which is pretty good. Then for every character from Leeway you have, it's going to give you some attack and crit rate. I haven't really looked much into Navia's teams, but I don't think she's going to have many Leeway characters generally. Maybe like Zhongli or whatever, but it's not really going to be as much. So I would say the passive is not really as good, but either way, just for the attack, I just put at B tier. We have the Snow Tom Star Silver. It's just side by side about physical damage as substat and then the useless passive. I'd say it's probably C tier to be honest. We have the Luxurious Sea Lord, low base stack, attack as a substat though, which is pretty good. It's going to increase your elemental burst damage from the passive, which is pretty good too. It's not really going to be a large portion of your damage, but it's going to be cool. And then it's going to give you some extra damage. It's not really the weapon to use, but I would say it's usable too. I'd put it like lower B tier, very low B tier, but it's definitely usable. We have the Katsuragikuri, average base stack and your recharge as a substat. It's going to increase your elemental skills damage, but it's going to be very little. And then it's going to be giving you energy. It's more of like an energy weapon, which you don't really need on Navia. So I'll just put it as C tier probably. We have the Machaira Aquamarine, average base stack, but then elemental mastery. And then it's just going to give you attack based around your elemental mastery, which you probably won't be building. Probably D tier, I would say. We have the Akumaru, average base stack for 4-star, attack as a substat. And then the passive is just going to increase your elemental burst damage based around the party's combined energy capacity. Again, I haven't really looked that much into her teams, but I don't think she's going to be using that many team members that use like a lot of energy. So I'm not sure if you're going to be able to get like the maximum bonus. Either way though, it doesn't matter because as I said, the elemental burst damage is not going to be a big portion for damage. But yeah, just for the attack and stuff like that, I just put that B tier. We have Forest Regalia, high base attack and recharge as substat. The passive is just completely useless, so I'll probably put that like C or D tier. I'd say D tier. We have the Mailed Flower, high base attack, elemental mastery, which is also useless. It's just going to give you some attack from the passive, but it's not really as much. I'll probably say it's C tier. We have the Tolkien Stick, high base attack for a 4-star weapon, then crit rate as a substat, which is super good. The passive is just going to increase your attack if you're affected by Pyro, and then it's going to increase your elemental damage bonus if you're affected by Hydra or Cryo or Electro or whatever. It's going to be hard to activate actually, but if you manage to get it, it's actually going to be a pretty good weapon. You might be able to get the Pyro buff if you're using Bennett, but the other elemental damage buff, I don't think you're going to be able to get, to be honest. Again, I haven't really looked much into her teams, but I don't think it's going to be possible. But yeah, either way, it's going to be a decent weapon. I'll put it at like lower A tier, to be honest. It's actually is going to be pretty good. We have the Tidal Shadow, average base stack, attack as a substat, and then when you're healed, you're going to gain even more attack, so it actually is pretty good. I'll probably put it at like higher B tier. We have the new event weapon, high base stack and recharge as a substat, which is not really as good, but the passive is going to give you a lot of attack, and I think it's going to be very consistent. I'm not sure if I understand the passive correctly, but yeah, I think it's going to be pretty consistent. So yeah, it's going to be pretty decent. I'd say it's B tier too. Then finally, we have the final 4-star. We have the Portable Power Saw, low base stack HP, and then a useless passive, so it's going D tier. And now for the 5-star weapons, we have the Skyward Pride, super high base stack and recharge as a substat, which is not really necessary. necessary, and then some damage bonus from the passive, and then it's gonna give you some extra damage. Pretty decent actually. The energy recharge substack and it ruins it, so it definitely wouldn't really be S tier, but it's still a very good weapon. I'll put it at like A tier too. You have the Wolf's Gravestone, average base attack for a 5-star weapon, but it's still pretty high. Attack is a substat, and then even more attack from the passive. It actually is pretty good too, but the thing is, I think it's just too much attack to the point it's just like kind of diminishing returns. But either way, it's still a very good weapon, so I'd say it's A tier too. You have Song of Broken Pines, very high base attack, but physical damage is a substat, which is not really as good. It's pretty much just gonna give you some attack from the whole passive too. I'm not gonna read all of that, but yeah, it's pretty much the same thing, just high base attack and then attack from the passive. It's like the Skyward. I would just say it's A tier too. We have the Unforged, just average base attack for a 5-star attack, and then even more attack from the passive too. I'd say it's A tier too, just like the Wolf's Gravestone. We have the Red Horn, low base attack for a 5-star, but it's still pretty good. Crit damage is a substat. The passive is not really as good. It's just defense and then normal attack damage, which is not really that important, but it's still pretty decent. So I would say it's kind of like lower A tier, I would say. We have Beacon of the Reed Sea, average base attack for a 5-star. We have crit rate as a substat. The passive is just gonna give you more attack. I don't think you're gonna be able to have the full passive with full uptime, but it's still a very good weapon. It's just more attack, crit rate, good base attack. So I would say it's probably S tier. I'll put that S tier. And then finally, we have our signature weapon, super high base attack and then crit rate as a substat. It's a small substat, but it's still pretty good. The passive is just gonna be giving you attack and then also elemental skill damage bonus, which is also very good. So it's almost pretty much everything you need. Obviously, definitely gonna be your best in slot, so I just put that S tier. But yeah, that's the tier list. As you guys can see here, she's not really very free to play friendly, except you have like the battle pass weapon, the Serpent Spine, maybe, but it's not really free to play. So yeah, she's not really very free to play friendly, like weapons wise, but also if you have like any 5-star weapons, they're gonna work on her, so it's probably cool for most people. At least you probably have at least one, so you're gonna be able to manage. But yeah, that was the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and see you guys in the next video. Peace.